In just the last few months, an incredible change has taken place in the city of Dongguan, China. Once known as the workshop of the world, a place that made everything from shoes to smartphones, the city is now transforming at a dizzying pace. But the heart of this revival isn't towering factories, it's a booming nightlife economy. Dance halls, nightclubs, bars, and karaoke parlors are all rushing to reopen, and even official night markets are being encouraged by the government. The vibrant energy, the buzz of lights and music, has brought a new breath of life, dispelling the gloomy atmosphere that had hung over the city for years. After struggling with economic recession, with waves of factory closures and relocations, the local government is now betting everything on this nightlife gambit, hoping to pull off a spectacular comeback. For those who witnessed Dongguan's peak, this comeback brings back memories of a golden age. The city is tearing down barriers, fast-tracking the approval process for entertainment and performance venues. The revival of this entertainment hub, once the pride of the entire city, is expected to reawaken a Dongguan that has been dormant for nearly a decade. Back in 2014, a massive crackdown dealt a fatal blow to Dongguan's economy. Many of the supporting industries, considered the city's lifeblood, were paralyzed, and the economy stalled alarmingly. Now, tens of thousands of unemployed women are pouring back into Dongguan, carrying faint hopes for a new life, looking for a chance to start over amid the widespread hardship. Before it became famous as the workshop of the world, Dongguan's booming manufacturing sector grew hand in hand with another pillar of its economy, the nightlife and hospitality scene. Few people realize that the first places in China to adopt professional management and customer service standards weren't major cities like Beijing or Shanghai, but right here in Dongguan. A veteran hotel owner once revealed that foreign visitors from Hong Kong or Taiwan, besides knowing about Beijing, knew Dongguan very well. The reason was simple. Dongguan offered services that were beyond their wildest imaginations. The so-called lavish parties or high-end entertainment, or other extravagant parties were just the tip of the iceberg. Even things that seemed to only exist in novels, like a service catalog or VIP list, were openly priced here. The level of extravagance in old Dongguan was truly beyond imagination. There's a story that circulated among the high rollers that if you had 100 million yuan to spend on the most luxurious services in the city, that money would only last you about 4 months. That's equivalent to spending 820,000 yuan every single day. To put that in perspective, a typical factory worker earning 5,000 yuan a month would have to work non-stop for nearly 14 years to make that much. That immense financial power turned Dongguan into a real gold mine. However, it all came to an abrupt end in 2014. The government launched an unprecedented crackdown called Crackdown Campaign or Major Cleanup Operation. Overnight, scores of KTVs and hotels were shut down. Over 2,000 entertainment venues were forced to cease operations, causing the industry to virtually disappear from the city. Today, many once famous establishments like the 5-star Prince Hotel are just desolate ruins, overgrown with weeds. But the towering pillars and faded signs still stand, like silent witnesses to a golden era that has long since passed. Now that the Dongguan government is reopening entertainment venues, can the legend of the past really be revived? Not everyone is convinced. Many people are asking skeptical questions. It's easy to open the doors, but where will the money come from? The factories have left. The businesses funded by Taiwanese and Hong Kong investors are gone too. The people who made and spent all that money aren't here anymore. So what's the point of reviving the nightlife economy? The harshest reality Dongguan faces isn't a lack of entertainment venues, but the collapse of its core economic foundation, the manufacturing industry. Dongguan, once the world's factory of the Pearl River Delta, is now witnessing an unprecedented manufacturing recession. The wave of factory closures has nearly crippled the city's economy, casting a dark shadow over every corner. The dealers of used equipment are the most direct witnesses to this collapse. In September 2023, one dealer filmed the desolate scene at a plastic injection molding factory in Dalong Town. An entire workshop that had been running for decades was now just grease stains on the floor and a pile of useless equipment. The factory couldn't survive the current economic climate and was forced to shut down for good. The number of factories closing is far greater than the number of new ones opening. As a result, the warehouses of used equipment dealers are overflowing with machinery that can't be sold, and it eventually has to be treated as scrap metal. The sight of machines piled up so high they spill into the walkways has become all too common in Shenzhen and Dongguan. The businesses that are still holding on are struggling with a lack of orders, thin profit margins, and a bleak market. Business owners say they are just barely hanging on, that no one is really doing well. On one hand, they have to accept unprofitable orders just to keep their workers. On the other, they can't afford to cover their operating costs. This pressure has left factory owners with no motivation to invest in production anymore. Even the most modern, expensive equipment sits idle for months because there are no orders. According to some local sources, about 70 to 80% of manufacturing plants in Dongguan and Shenzhen are operating at a loss. There was a time when Dongguan's manufacturing sector was incredibly glorious, especially in electronics. If Shenzhen was considered the electronics capital, then Dongguan was the global electronics production floor. The city played a key role in the global smartphone supply chain, with major players like Foxconn, Luxshare Precision, and Flextronics producing for top world brands like Apple, Samsung, Huawei, Oppo, and Vivo. Between 2015 and 2016, when the global smartphone market peaked, Dongguan was producing somewhere between 250 to 400 million phones a year. However, since 2016, global smartphone production began to decline. By 2022, Dongguan's output had fallen to less than 200 million units, not even half of its peak, signaling the end of the workshop of the world era. Dongguan's decline is also reflected in its macroeconomic data. In 2021, the city's GDP peaked, crossing the 1 trillion yuan mark, and its population surpassed 10 million. But by 2022, its GDP grew by only 0.6%, far below the provincial average of 1.9% for Guangdong. In the first half of 2023, even as the country was recovering from the pandemic, Dongguan grew by just 1.5%, ranking last among the 21 cities in Guangdong. Industrial output dropped sharply, especially in key sectors like electronic equipment and electrical machinery manufacturing. Exports, another lifeblood for Dongguan, are also taking a heavy hit. In the first half of 2023, the city's foreign trade exports fell by 11.3%. The uncertainty from U.S. tariffs and the trade war with China has dealt a severe blow to export-oriented businesses. Behind these grim numbers is the tragic story of thousands of businesses that have had to shut down or relocate. In 2023, about 3,500 companies disappeared, from furniture and apparel to electronics and textiles. This collapse is most visible in Chang'an Town, once considered Dongguan's most prosperous town. Now, the scene is bleak, with shuttered shops and factories. For rent signs are everywhere in the industrial parks, something that would have been unimaginable in the past. Shops that once commanded rents of tens of thousands of yuan are now constantly changing hands or simply sit empty. One resident who has lived in Chang'an for over 20 years said he has never seen a situation this dire, not even during the pandemic. Chongqing Road, once the busiest street, is now deserted, with rows of closed storefronts. The prosperity of Dongguan has vanished, and perhaps it will never come back. The consequence of this wave of factory closures is a severe social crisis. Many business owners have simply fled, leaving workers unable to collect their wages and forcing them to protest in the streets. Millions of others are unemployed, forced to return to their hometowns or left stranded in Dongguan. There have been many videos showing unemployed people sleeping on the streets. In May 2024, a group of young workers had to sleep in abandoned concrete pipes on the outskirts of the city because they couldn't afford rent. They've been given a bitter nickname, the Rat People. The giant sewer pipes in Chang'an have become a makeshift dormitory. During the day, these unemployed people ride their bikes around looking for odd jobs. At night, they collect bottles to scrape by. These images are no different from scenes from the Great Depression, but they're happening right now in the heart of what was once China's workshop. Faced with these enormous challenges, the Dongguan government is trying to stimulate growth by developing its nightlife economy. However, many analysts believe it's unlikely Dongguan can ever reclaim its former glory. The nightlife economy is being squeezed by two main factors. On one hand, trends driven by social media influencers have created an illusion of a consumer boom. On the other hand, real economic hardship has meant that people are no longer willing or able to spend. The owner of a karaoke bar in Dongguan shared the harsh reality of the industry. He said reopening is just for show, that it's not really bringing in business. Even though the approval process has been shortened, the nightlife economy just hasn't gotten the boost it needs. In fact, many other cities in China show that the nightlife economy is struggling. Even in Shanghai, the situation isn't much better. In many places, bans on alcohol sales and crackdowns have caused revenues to plummet. A prime example is Changsha, a city once known for its vibrant nightlife, which saw its nightlife economy collapse by 60% after a 100-day-long campaign. Now, even the most famous hotspots are just barely getting by or have had to change their business models. This decline isn't just happening in smaller cities. Even bars and nightclubs in Chengdu have had to close down in large numbers due to tightening regulations. The government's policies often seem inconsistent, even contradictory. Dongguan's gambit to develop its nightlife economy may just be a short-term trend, lacking a solid foundation, and it will very likely end in failure. A dream of revival has been lit, but that light seems far too fragile against a bleak macroeconomic backdrop. Dongguan, the workshop of the world, is now at a crossroads, and the path ahead is still very uncertain.